in me will do nearly any task, and as for compensation, there's little he would ask. Take a woman like you to get through to the man in me. Storm clouds are raging all around my door. I think to myself, I might not take it anymore. Take a woman like your kind to find the man in me. Welcome to Songs of Experience, a Bob Dylan podcast where we explore the man and the music one song at a time. I'm your host, Henry Bernstein, and I'm thrilled to be here in person with my dear, dear friend, Roberta Rakove, here to talk about The Man in Me off of Bob's 1970 album, New Morning. Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Henry.
This is my first road show. I'm taking the show on the road. Here we are in your house. Thank you so much for hosting me. Yeah, I think it looks great. You look great. It's great to see you and great to be here together. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, I'm thrilled.
So before we get into the song, Roberta, I'm sure many folks who are listening might have heard it before, but for those that haven't, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Bob Dylan origin story, how you got into him, when you got into him?
So I have three parts to my origin story, and I'll be really brief because we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do.
So part one is that my actual physical origin story is that my father was an Eastern European Jew living in Hibbing, Minnesota until he was 12. And so, I feel it's not a genetic connection. We're not related. I wish we were.
You could be. A lot of the Jews in Minnesota are related to Bob Dylan.
A lot of the Jews are related to Minnesota, but I think my grandfather was a miner on the iron ore range. He was dodging the draft, the Tsar's draft. So that's one. So the second was I wasn't into Bob in high school. I'm 73, so I was in high school 64, 68, totally into the Beatles. I went off to a very lefty liberal arts college called Pitzer in California, and total late 60s, early 70s experience. And I was sitting in someone's room and they put on Blonde, and it was a life-changing moment. I mean, I heard that music. And it didn't just change that I was obsessed with the music, but it really changed the way I looked at life. There was something about how Dylan was doing things that did that. So that was my second moment. And I just, went there. And then I think I would say my third origin story started with the pandemic, because my husband really knows music and he likes Bob. He's not like us, right? And so, he's not obsessed. He's done music writing. He really appreciates it. He was at the Isle of Wight, all of that. But
which is such a great story in itself.
Because he's British. But it was during the pandemic through Twitter and podcasts that I discovered there were other people like me who weren't going to be rolling their eyes at me all the time. And so that led me to people like you, and to your friend Aaron Callahan, and to the Bob Dylan Center and the Bob Dylan Conference and Rob Kelly's podcast and the Jokerman podcast, all of these different things. And so I feel that was a third era, because now I've gone really deep down the rabbit hole, right? But it's so great to have found an actual community. My friends are nice, but they're like, here she goes, right? So I really think that is almost a separate. I was just thinking about that the other day, that's like a separate era as a fan.
Yeah. It's like a new morning for you.
Yeah, it's a new morning.
It's amazing to sit here and kind of celebrate that together in person. So before we get into the lyrics and the music, I just wanted to share a little bit about the statistics. So this album, New Morning, was recorded between June and August of 1970 for an October 21st, 1970 release. So Bob really churned this out. I can't think of since the trilogy of rock albums, that kind of fast turnaround, which is really incredible. And it has a all-star group of players. You have Bob Dylan, of course, on vocals, piano, a lot of piano for Bob at that period of time. Obviously, much later, in our modern times, he's a piano player, but on guitar, of course, harmonica, a little bit of organ, a little bit of electric guitar. You had Dave Bromberg on electric guitar and dobro, Harvey Brooks and Charlie Daniels, as in the Charlie Daniels, The Devil Went Down to Georgia, on bass guitar.
Quite a crew.
Quite a crew. Ron Cornelius, Buzz Phaeton. Al Cooper,
Al
like
Cooper.
a Rolling Stone, Al Cooper back on organ, and actually played a little French horn on this album too. Russ Kunkel, Billy Mundy, Hilda Harris, and Albertine Robinson on backing vocals for the song we're talking about. There were a few others as well. And this album came about, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in the Bob Dylan Center book, there's quite a lengthy section about how this album came about as Bob was writing music for a play.
For Archibald MacLeish.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Archibald MacLeish.
Well, Archibald MacLeish is one of the major American poets, right? And won the Pulitzer Prize, and I think may have been poet laureate. I think he was one of the poet laureates. And they approached Bob. I doubt it was his idea. It was somebody else's, the producer's idea.
They got to him through Clive Davis.
Yeah, and the idea of putting together, one of America's most famous older literary figures, and then then Bob, as a symbol of another time entirely.
Right.
And he was doing a musical about based on The Devil and Daniel Webster.
Right.
It was pretty dark.
Yeah.
And you've read in Chronicles probably what I've read in Chronicles about Bob's feelings about the meeting with Archibald MacLeish, and it just seemed like a tremendous mismatch.
Right. Bob Dylan said, Archie's play was so heavy, so full of midnight murder. There was no way I could make its purpose mine, but it was great meeting him, a man who had reached to the moon when most of us scarcely make it off the ground. Like top 50, top 25 Bob Dylan quote there. He's so poetic, even on these off the cuff remarks about meeting a playwright. That's so great. But because of that musical scratch, he started writing these songs, which by June, Dylan had written New Morning and Father of Night, June of 69, actually, the year before. So, it's really amazing that this album is sort of a happy accident. And, some people, are critical that it's kind of it's too happy, and it's, but it's not, dark and sad like Blood on the Tracks or something. Yeah. I love it.
I love this album, and I learned it was really important to me in the pandemic. So, I'm learning to do everything on Zoom. We're completely isolated from everybody. And I would be working in my office, and if I was feeling kind of pandemic nervous, I would put on New Morning. And
really?
It really makes you happy, right? Even though it may not have been the happiest point in his life, right. So interesting when you go back and look at how he was feeling about Woodstock and people storming, but his house, but I love this album.
Yeah. Roberta, do you remember when it came out? You had sort of gotten into Bob right around that time, right? 70 or so, or?
I in 1970, I was still catching up on the older albums. So, and this one didn't make a big impression on me at the time. Of course, I bought everything.
Did you at the time? I bought everything. Bought it on
vinyl? And it probably would have been, Self-Portrait would have come out right before. Right. But it didn't make a big impression on me on the time. This is one I've come to love.
It did pretty well. In the UK albums, it peaked at number 1, and US it peaked at number 7 on the US Billboard chart. So it did pretty well, and I think critically, people liked it too, especially with the sort of dichotomy of Self-Portrait, which was misunderstood. Right. I won't quote, of course, the famous quote about it, but some of the critics also actually didn't like that he reverted back to his Bob Dylan voice, or it's actually, I wouldn't say it's a reversion back. It's more of a evolution into a sort of that voice that you see more in Blood on the Tracks and the Rolling Thunder Review, but not the voice that he had on Nashville Skyline and Self-Portrait. He was Bob Dylan again.
Right. I don't think people yet had come to embrace the fact that he has all these different voices is a plus, not a minus. Because we
love it.
We love it.
Yeah.
People get particularly in that era, people became sort of fanatically attached to their image of Bob Dylan, and they really hated change, any change, right? So whatever they were interpreting as change.
Having said all that, we love the change. We love all that. Why this song? You could have picked any Bob Dylan song to talk to me about. You have talked to me about many Bob Dylan songs. Why this one?
Well, you know, when you said you were going to invite me on your show, I was like, oh, they're so excited. And at first I was sort of thinking about I and I, which is a song which I really, really love and I've thought a lot about, but I realized I don't even know how to talk about that song. It's so complex. And then what happened was I thought about The Man in Me because I always liked it. But when Budokan, when the complete Budokan came out, and remember when we were all getting these teasers, right? So they dropped that beautiful rendition of I Want You. And I think we may have even communicated around then because you couldn't stop listening to that, right? It was so wrenching and gorgeous and whatever. And then they dropped The Man in Me. And I remember I was listening, so, you know, I was up early and I listened to it and I thought, this went from being this sort of sweet, lovely song that we all imagine is about domesticity and being supported by your partner and being in love to a song about adultery.
Yes, yes.
And I remember Braley Heron, who is, you know, writes a lot about Dylan from an academic standpoint, and he's not on any social media. So I feel it's my personal responsibility to let him know if something new has happened. And I remember emailing him at 6 a.m. saying, oh my God, Braley, this song just went, you know, this song isn't even the same song anymore. And it's amazing. You have to, like, when you get up, go on YouTube and listen to this because I know you're not going to see it. And that was such an incredible change and really speaks to the fact, this whole concept that is so unique to Bob, of his music constantly, you know, like he says about himself being in a state of becoming, his music is constantly in a state of becoming. And who would have thought this song would have become then what it became in the 70s? Now, obviously he had changed, but I always think it's a fool's errand to try to tie biography to his music too much, because what do we really know, right? But the idea that you would take this song that is so happy and, you know, we've had the pleasure now of watching the video where they're recording it and it's just like,
oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah. It's so happy. And then it becomes this song where, you know, for, you know, on the, you know, on the river of no return. And I try to make it up to you, but I'm afraid my heart would burn. And then, you know, you've got a husband and, and I'm lying next to her and I'm thinking of you and you're like, what just happened?
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about that for a second. So the original lyrics, but oh, what a wonderful feeling just to know that you are near, sets my heart a reeling from my toes up to my ears. The man in me will hide sometimes to keep from being seen, but that's just because he doesn't want to turn into some machine. Took a woman like you to get through to the man in me. And that's it. I mean, that's the song. And then the la la la.
La la la. And
it's not, you know, I don't want to say that like the lyrics are vapid or anything, but there's only so much you can say about these. Like you said, it seems to be a love song about being supported by your partner, and the idea that when you're in a relationship that's positive and supportive, that the person you're with makes you a better person.
Yes.
You know, like I feel this way about my wife, that like I'm a better me when I'm with her, right? And I think that seems to be what this is about. And
that along with, you know, when he says, you know, that she protects him too. You know, storm clouds are rising all around my door. And so when you're living through a tumultuous time, you look to your partner for support. So it's very sweet.
It's adorable.
So sweet. It's a lovely little love song, we think.
But then
it's not.
But then So instead of storms, clouds are raging all around my door, we get, so this is in Paris in July 6th, 1978, 8 years later. Storms on the river of no return. I'd try to teach you how, but I know that you'd never learn to take a woman like your kind to find the man in me. Roberta, what do you think take a woman like your kind means in both contexts? He said that's one thing that doesn't change, but what does that mean, like your kind?
Well,
because that seems like kind of a derogatory thing to say.
And I think,
but when he says it in one context, it's very sweet, and in another context, it's not.
A woman like you, right? So it's more individual. And yeah, this is there's no edge in the first lyrics, I don't think. I mean, no edge whatsoever. Everything about the evolution of these lyrics, because you just gave one the early, these were constantly changing till we get to Budokan too. At least, I've heard a couple versions. Everything about it has a conflicted edge.
Right.
There's conflict in these lyrics, and there's conflict about the other person.
Right. How can you believe it? Well, I guess it's true. Yeah. I'm lying next to her, baby, but I'm thinking of you. Take a woman like you to get through to the man in me. And it's such a strange dichotomy with then you get to, oh, what a wonderful feeling just to know you really exist. It makes my head go reeling, not heart.
Yeah.
All you got to do is look my way, and baby, I just can't resist. So
I know
he's really playing with. We've seen this in Bob's stuff before. The sort of the throuple, the other woman kind of thing. As I talked about on episode 2, A Tight Connection, My Heart. In that video, there's that whole thing. When he goes on, I go down to the border beneath the sun, calling out her name, but baby, you're the one. Take a woman like you to get through the man in me. And then, like you said on Budokan, I know you got a husband of your own, but I can't turn you loose if you can't leave me alone. Take a woman like you to get through to the man in me. Whoa, Bob!
and there's a lot of compelling the other person.
Yeah,
in those lyrics, right?
Is it manipulative, or is it sort of thirsty?
It's sort of, I would say the second. There's an obsessive nature to it. I can't turn you loose. You can't leave me alone, or but it's the other way, whatever it is. And so that's what's so startling is all that's left of the first song is the musical architecture, right? And even that is not light anymore. It's even the music is more driving.
Right.
It doesn't have that happy, feeling to it.
Right.
It becomes a much darker song.
Do the la la las, is that what makes it ultimately a happy song? The la 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 fade out, or is it the lyrics?
I think the whole thing.
The whole thing. I think there's a vibe about
the la la las are. I love the la.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, I love it.
Listen, I'm a part-time. I'm a sometimes Jewish musician. We're all about the yai
So exactly
the same thing.
The same thing. And it's just it's a happy. There's no way around. It's just it's a happy song, and someone, not that his whole life is happy, because he talks about the storm clouds are rising, and that was a tough time for them in many ways. Yeah. But if it even relates to that, who knows, right?
Right.
But this other song is
it's another song.
It's another song. It's not a clean song about relationships. It's a complicated song about relationships.
One thing that occurred to me is that as you were talking about, it's another thing, and it's not a clean song, is that where I said before that it's a song about that feeling you get when you're in a supportive partnership and your partner makes you a better person. Here, when he's referring to the man in me, there's like a snark to it. It's like he's maybe resentful of it. Yeah. Like, you're doing these things. It takes a woman like you to get through to the man in me. Maybe it's more mean.
Yeah, well, and he's also, I think, you know, especially in the lyrics in Budokan, he's sort of owning up to not being such a great guy himself.
Right, that's
Right?
true.
You
Yeah.
know, I know you've got a husband. Are you okay? Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, I
Right. I mean, he's just sort of admitting he can't really help himself. I mean,
yeah.
Well, what's amazing about that live version? Let's get into the live
I
stuff,
love it so
Roberta.
much. I
So,
love the live version so much.
what's amazing about this is this song has been performed a whopping 155 times. Now, compared to Highway 61 or Watchtower, that's nothing. But that's a lot for what you would call a deep cut from an album, right? And what's also amazing about this that you brought up the Budokan is that was its debut. He didn't play this on the Rolling Thunder Review or any other, or or the Isle of Wight. I guess he hadn't written that yet, or any shows between this album and Budokan. That's 8 years that this song was nothing. So it never got debuted in its original form until years and years and years later. It took a 10-year hiatus in 1978, then pretty frequently through the late 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and last played in 2011. So my question for you, Roberta, is have you ever seen Bob live? I know the answer. And have you ever heard him play live The Man in Me?
I would have to go back and look. I don't remember him playing The Man in Me, but doesn't mean he didn't do it. Because
so you have seen him live.
Oh, yes, I've seen him live. You know, I mean, I've seen him live a lot.
Yeah,
you know,
it's me even. The same theater as me.
Yeah, I've seen him live with you 3 times,
3
right?
times, yeah.
Just so that
probably other times that we weren't before we knew each other.
Chicago, you know, we probably saw him. Were you at the Wintrust Arena?
Of course,
yeah, of course.
The one show in all of Expecting Rain you cannot find, that 2017 October show.
Yeah,
with Mavis Staples.
Right. So I've seen him many, many times. Although I didn't know I was supposed to be keeping track.
But I won't ask the next question. How many?
but it's just been a lot.
Yeah.
We've seen him. I think there was probably a period when our son was born in 88. I think there was a period where we didn't do anything because we didn't have any money. But mostly I've seen, mostly we've tried to see him whenever we could. Add to the complication that we don't drive. So occasionally there would be a concert where you go, I have no idea how I'm going to get there. Like Hammond, Indiana or whatever.
Right.
Like, how am I going to get there?
Right.
So we couldn't go. And on principle, I didn't go see him at Ravinia because if you're not in the pavilion, I hate seeing anybody there because people are talking all around.
It's, you have to go into the Ravinia thing knowing that if you're not in the pavilion, you're just going to be there for a picnic to hear background music, and that's not a way to hear.
It's not a way.
Modern Bob Dylan.
It's not a way to hear Bob. So I feel it's disrespectful, so I won't do it.
That show was the weekend of my wedding. The weekend of my wedding. The weekend of my wedding, I missed my 3 favorite live acts to see. Bob Dylan, Grace Potter, and Fish were all in Chicago the weekend of my wedding. Fish played 3 nights at Wrigley Field.
So that was a test of your commitment.
It was such a test. It takes a woman like her to get through to The Man in Me.
so Lizzie probably has put up with all this Dylan stuff because of that weekend.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, she came, on our 3rd date, we went to see Bob Dylan, and she hasn't gone since, and that's fine. But I got to see The Man in Me 3 times, and as a massive Big Lebowski fan, I mean, it's probably the movie I've seen the most times outside of Superman the movie. Hearing The Man in Me live was unbelievable. It was October 30th, 2009, November 2nd, 2009 in Bloomington, Indiana, and then back in Chicago a year later, October 30th. On it, Donnie Herron played trumpet, and it was so bizarre because the trumpet had appeared in that era, 2009, for Beyond Here Lies Nothing, which you're an expert on, thanks to your wonderful episode on Bob Dylan. And he brought it out, The Man in Me, and he didn't take like a lengthy trumpet solo. He's just sort of going in between Bob's phrases, kind of like how Bob plunks along the piano in between his phrases sometimes. But in Bloomington, Bob did a nice length harmonica intro, and then harmonica solos on each of them. And, thinking back now, where when we see Bob on the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour and the harmonica is like a special attraction.
The harmonica is like you've just been blessed.
Yeah, it's like
harmonica
because it's the one thing that sounds exactly the same. It's like, oh, that's Bob Dylan playing harmonica. It sounds exactly the same as it did, in the 60s. But then he played it all the time, in 2009. It was just kind of cool. Oh, and, the crowd went nuts for the harmonica. But that is all to say is that the sort of debut of the original The Man in Me didn't happen until the Neverending Tour. And then it became, I wouldn't say a staple, but enough that it was like, it was like a fun one. Like if you caught A Man in Me, it was great. So like in 2009, 2010, he had brought it back after not playing for a few years. And the lyrics were straight up like this. It was a happy song. He was growling his way through it and playing harmonica and some trumpet. And so, what I wonder is why he reverted back. Does that, is that to say that during that period of time in 1978, it's not just that he was doing musically things different with the backup singers and the horns. He was doing lyrical things that were different. Like what was going on for him in 1978 that this song of all things got a massive rewrite? That's sort of, I don't know if you have an answer for that.
I don't have an answer for that.
Of course we don't know.
But I think it's a really brilliant question because, we know from, I'm sure, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at Aaron and Court Carney's book on set lists, but we know that the set lists have a lot of meaning. The set lists are not accidental. The set lists are important. And so when his set list changes or he puts something into it, he's trying to do something with the set list. So where it falls in the set list, I always feel like
it was by the way, in those 2009 2010 shows, it was the second song.
So it's something, there's meaning to where it gets placed. And you know how people always say he's our Shakespeare, whatever. Well, in some ways, there's a theatricality to how he's building his set list. So you can't just take it's important. If a song is in there, it's there for a reason. Sometimes I think when you think about the Budokan thing, he had a song in development he was developing this song, and so maybe, and the idea that doing it with an audience changes his process or it supports his process so that he can work with different audiences to make something different. That, the audience isn't,
they're not passive.
Yeah. I was actually, when we were just in London and we went to the Globe, and when you go to the Globe in London, there's a whole, they reproduce Elizabethan theater. And so there's a whole section on the floor that you pay nothing for, like £5, and you can be what's called a groundling. And those are people who stand in front of the stage and they're part of the production. So like,
is that where the term groundling comes from?
I think that's where the term groundling comes from.
So cool.
And so when, for example, someone's going to be on water, the groundlings are waving their arms. They have a part in the actual production, and it's really cool. I mean, it's a great thing when your kids are older and you take them to London. You sit in seats, but have them, because you're standing there for 3 hours, but have them be groundlings, and in a way. So they participate in making the play. And in a way, I think when he's working something out in performance, the audience is playing a role in what he's doing. I don't know what the role is, but clearly there's the audience is they're groundlings here, for him. And
I mean, we've seen that. I mean, certainly on the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour, reports of those few GA shows he did where there was just like a standing room only, that he seemed to be feeding off and the band seemed to be feeding off the dancing, and it seems like he likes it. Now in Memphis I saw 2 shows where the crowd pretty much sucked.
And it changes everything.
But he didn't seem fazed by it. He just did his thing.
No, but it changes us.
But it changes the feeling if you're not, if you're like, it's not like, Chicago Night 1 when everyone just exploded when he came out to Born in Chicago. I mean, that was, and then of course, next night with Truckin', those were just like moments where everyone was in it together. So I don't know. I wasn't at the Budokan shows or any of that tour, so I don't know what the experience was like.
Be fun?
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's in like a top 5 of Time Machine Bob Dylan shows for sure.
Yeah, if you could be
Did you ever see him in the 70s or 80s?
Oh yeah. No, I saw him in the 70s and I saw him in the 80s. But
did you see him like the Christian period or?
I never. Okay, if you want to know what I've missed that I would have loved to have been in, is I love the Christian period performances.
I mean, they're unbelievable,
and I love the music. I remember thinking, I'm Jewish too. I'm thinking, wait, he's ours. Where's he going here? And this feels really sad. But now, when you revisit those performances, you think that would have been something to have been at those shows, because the intensity of the performance is so great, and the backup is, everything about them is great, right?
You watch that.
So
number of videos.
If I could go back in time, I used to think it would be Rolling Thunder, but I actually think it would be like that Massey Hall, Toronto show. It would have been amazing. I mean, I don't know how at home you would feel. You've got all these people holding up signs saying the Lord is here, and that's not, that wouldn't be my milieu. But I think now it's one of those things.
Budokan is on the cusp of that.
Budokan is on the cusp of that. Yeah. Also, the use of the backup singers, which now we just love the use of the backup singers, right? But there was all that resentment that he was having, that he was putting on a Las Vegas style show. I don't see
the Neil Diamond.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, I wouldn't care, but it was an exciting show.
It's amazing that this song, so it had that sort of moment in 78, and then he played it regularly throughout the 80s and 90s, but really the Coen brothers made it a Bob Dylan song that everyone knows, thanks to The Big Lebowski. And it's not just that it's used in the credits or something the dude's listening to on the radio. Like, it's the opening, like that snare hits and it says The Big Lebowski, and then you get that iconic scene of everyone rolling. The guy does the fist pump, and then later it's used in the dream sequence. So they use it twice.
They use it twice. Well, and it's so funny because there was no way I could get this done before we did this. But I know you'll think this is crazy, a bit eccentric. I actually kind of wanted to go bowling.
To get into the vibe.
And listen to the music while you were bowling, because
I've done that, by the way.
Okay, so there you go. So this is why we're probably long lost relatives. But obviously, The Big Lebowski made it iconic. I mean, so The Big Lebowski is an iconic cultural moment of its own.
Yeah. Total flop in the theater. I saw it in theater, in a packed theater, standing in the back in Evanston, by the way.
But now, I mean, this. So and T-Bone Burnett, right? Selected this. I mean, they listed him as a musical archivist, whatever that means. But and then it's used in these two totally separate ways. It's so connected not only with The Big Lebowski, but with bowling.
Yes.
Now that you have all these spin-offs, so The Simpsons has a bowling scene, and so you see these other bowling scenes, and the other thing that I think is really funny is the degree to which this is connected with The Big Lebowski. So I was looking at the comments, how on the YouTube people post their comments on the Budokan one, and people are going, the dude, and whatever. You're going, this has nothing. This is not even the same song anymore. But for everybody, so it's interesting, and of course the Coen brothers. There's this tie with Dylan, right? And in terms of not just this, but
Inside Llewyn Davis.
Yes. Right?
Yes.
And
in Fargo, they go to Minnesota. There is a Minnesotan connection.
Yeah, there's a Minnesota connection
in many of their films. Yeah.
So. And then there's the Jeff Bridges connection, because, it's not just, he and Jeff Bridges have this connection, not just here, right? So you've got, Masked and Anonymous, and Ray Padgett has a, wonderful interview that he did with Jeff Bridges about the two of them jamming on this, and there's this sort of wonderful,
and Bridges played it live at Lebowski Fest.
Bridges plays it live with he's got his country music band, and he, so you have an iconic movie turning the song into like a mini iconic song because of the movie, which, as you said, I mean, of all movies to become this cultural moment in time, who would have guessed that it would be The Big Lebowski?
I know, and like you said, it's in The Simpsons, the episode "The Town," and it's spoofing the Big Lebowski. It's in the 2013 documentary "The Smash Brothers." It's used in an episode of How I Met Your Mother. I remember watching that live and being like, "What?" Yeah. It's used in a commercial for Quicken Loans.
Mortgage, I know, Quicken Loans, and then can I talk about the Mauritanian?
Yeah, lay it on me.
So I'm reading up, and I had never seen the Mauritanian.
By the way, I have to say, Roberta, so just a little peek behind the curtain. So you texted me about that, but it got auto-corrected to The Mandalorian. Oh. So I went crazy. I'm like, what? There's a Star Wars? And like, spoiler alert, the end of The Mandalorian last season, he's sitting in his house kind of chilling with Grogu at his side. I'm like, wait, is humanity in this?
Auto-corrected that to me too. And I should have really watched for it. So The Mauritanian is a film about a man from Mauritania, Mohamedou Salid, I think is his last name. And he was held at Guantanamo for 14 years and was tortured there. He was, he did a confession that was a result of torture. And the film is a true story. The film is about this woman, American attorney, taking on his case and what happens. And so, it's a good film. It's got Benedict Cumberbatch in it, and Jodie Foster plays the lawyer, and the guy that plays Mohamedou is really, really good. But it's sort of a bit of a brutal movie to watch too. But I had read somewhere it uses the song, but you have to watch the whole movie. You can't just go to the credits. You really have to watch the whole movie.
Is it in the credits? Is that?
So I understood why. So at the end, and you've just been through, I mean, towards the end of the movie, you see there's really brutal segment of the torture that takes place. But he eventually gets out. I mean, it takes 14 years, but he eventually gets out. And at the end of the movie, they are showing clips of real person. So it turns out the real person is also a Big Lebowski fan.
Really?
I read that. I read that somewhere saying he really likes Big Lebowski. So they're showing him, he's with his son, and they're showing him in different settings, and he's really for someone who has been through this like horrible experience and lost 14 years of his life and all that. He's a really cheerful guy. And so there's one moment, and all of a sudden, for some reason, The Man in Me is playing, and he goes, Bob Dylan! And then he starts singing the whole song, and he's incredibly happy. And you're wondering, okay, what's going to happen that I had sat through the whole movie for this? Well, then you see why, because he just explodes with joy.
Oh my God.
Listening to the song and singing along with it.
Wow.
And so it's just a great moment about.
I'll have to check out that moment. I'm sorry, I'm not going to watch a movie about torture, but I'll watch that moment.
Just check out the end of it, and maybe before you leave, I can play it for you because but it talks to the power of the song, and then the power of joy in a way, and it's an incredibly moving moment because what this man has been through, and he just goes, Bob Dylan, like this. He's so excited. And how unlikely is that?
Right. It also appeared in a season 3 episode of Sex Education, which I never watched.
I never saw that.
Where the characters go bowling. So this song is forever tied to that movie, and Bob knows that, and Bob likes that.
He must love it
because people love it when he plays it. I mean, it's been a long time since he's played it. But that's like something that people definitely associate with it. And the fact that Jeff Bridges, did you ever see the movie Crazy Heart?
I love Crazy
It's
Heart.
so good.
I love that
right?
movie
Okay.
so much.
So incredible.
Yeah.
His singing and guitar playing is unbelievable.
I
Like
love
I
that
would go
movie.
see that tour of that guy.
Yeah.
But he like is this broken down
alcoholic
playing in a bowling
right,
alley, right? And it's sort of like it's kind of like what parts of Macid Anonymous should have been, right? Like he's sort of Jack Fate in a way.
Yeah.
But in my head canon, he has played the man in me. That character has played the man in me in a bowling alley.
Yeah. I mean, it's really wonderful. So I think, this song took a cultural road.
Yeah. Thanks to the Coen Brothers.
Yeah, thanks to the Coen Brothers.
Why do you think they included it? Of all the songs to include, I mean, there's something, Minnesota-y about New Morning, right?
But I'm guessing T-Bone Burnett.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing T-Bone Burnett.
I mean, I scoured.
We don't know, but
I Googled up and down. I could not find. The Coen Brothers are famously cagey. Don't talk about it. They don't talk about it on a director's commentary, Big Lebowski or anything. I texted Ron Kelly. Do you know if they've ever said anything about it? And they don't seem to. So maybe, T-Bone. So I'd love to ask T-Bone Burnett why this song.
We'd all love to ask T-Bone Burnett so many things.
Right. Can we also hear the blowing in the wind in a good in a good version?
Yeah. So Bob plays so many roles in our culture, right? That we don't even think about. It's just there.
Right.
So many phrases, so many lyrics and caricatures of him and, all of those things, right? But here, was an unlikely launch.
Yeah.
And then it elevated the song.
Totally.
So, you see it on, Rolling Stones, 100 Best Bob Dylan songs.
Number 84, right?
Number 84. Now, for anybody else, it might not be high up, but when you think of all Bob Dylan songs, it's pretty high up. And I actually made notes. It was ahead of, most of the time, Changing of the Guards, Highlands.
Yeah.
It's ahead of Highlands. Yeah. And You're a Big Girl Now, among others. I would, all of those, Senor.
Right.
It's ahead of Senor. And so it probably wouldn't be there if it hadn't been for the Big Lebowski.
I don't know if it would have made the list for sure. I mean, it's amazing that it even is on there, but it's sandwiched in between She's Your Lover Now and Nettie Moore is 83.
I know, it's
like it's in a good spot.
It's between,
I don't know that I would have put She's Your Lover Now in the top 100 Bob Dylan songs. Maybe I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. And these Rolling Stone lists, a lot of times they'll do them just to irritate people. But it is a top 100 Bob Dylan song for sure. But would we have thought it was if it never appeared in the Big Lebowski?
I don't think so. I think it might have just faded away.
Like, what if they had picked Sign on a Window or Went to See the Gypsy? These are all great songs.
They're all
Winterlude,
great songs.
Right? I mean,
I really love Went to See the Gypsy.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Really another song that sort of blends fiction with reality. Did it really happen?
Right.
We have to talk about the found footage. So the video of the man.
Isn't that just the best? How many times have you watched it?
I have a note here. I've seen it 15 times and I still can't believe it. From the Bob Dylan Center book, The Man in Me, based on a working set list of songs for Scratch that Archibald MacLeish's play. It appears that The Man in Me is one of the songs that had been originally written for the production. This lyric draft of the song comes from a notebook also containing lyrics to If Dog Runs Free, Winterlude, and fragments of Father of Night. Parts of the sessions for New Morning were videotaped on a very early Portapack equipment, likely by Dylan's friend Terry Noble. Thank you, Terry Noble.
Whoever you are.
Wherever you are. Among all the footage in the archive, this particular video is unique in that it captures Dylan recording the exact version of a song that appeared on an album. So if for folks out there, if you haven't seen this, just
go see it.
Just Google Bob Dylan, The Man in Me found footage. And it at first, when you're watching it, it seems like it's just an overdub of the recorded version with some footage of them playing, right? Like smashed together. But if that's true, then they synced it up perfectly.
No, I think it's real.
I always thought that the backup singers were put in later, but they're right there.
They're right there.
There's 5 of them. Some of them aren't even credited. Maybe there's 4, but that means that 1 or 2 of them aren't even credited on the track list? Who's there? And you see in this video, you see Dave Bromberg in the back. You see Charlie Daniels playing bass. You see Al Cooper playing organ, sort of from his perspective, and the pièce de résistance, but not really, because it's the whole time. Bob standing up, plunking away on the piano, just like we've seen him many times. Harmonica rack bent down around his neck, so he was clearly using it for another song. Dark shades, short fro, and beard. And I love bearded Bob.
and happy.
And happy. He's smiling.
He's having such a good, everybody's having a good time. You watch everybody, they're really all having so much fun. And he's having a good time. And we never get to see this, right?
No, especially in that period of time. Like, you think Bob is like such a tortured artist in many ways. Yeah. And he is having a blast. And I love when Bob Dylan is wearing sunglasses inside, because to me, he invented that look. Like, you would know better because you lived during that era, but like the look of from the 60s of the Ray-Bans everywhere, that's Bob Dylan's look. And so I love that even in the studio, like, how does he see, and he seems to know the lyrics, but like, how does he see what's going on with those dark glasses? Just a little, I mentioned I love the beard. He played this song also at Newport 2002 when he wore the fake beard and the fake. Oh my God! So I love that. Like, there's a beard connection there of Bob Dylan.
But also, he's so happy, and then we see this really human moment at the end where he just sort of lets out a. Yeah, we got through it, and it's good, and then he laughs. Yeah, and. I know that for normal non-Bob people, they're like, what's the big deal? But for us to see that human moment is so wonderful.
Yeah, because like when you see him in live in concert, you're constantly looking for those. Like, is he reacting to anything? Is he negative or positive? But to see him do that and to let out that sigh of relief, to be pleased with his bandmates. There's no, all right, let's go again, or there's no cut. They did it, and like have and it's fun to see that they're doing it live in the studio the way Bob likes it. Like, we know in the Jack Frost era produced albums, that's what Bob likes. He doesn't want overdubs and production. He wants the band there next to him. And they're doing that back in 1970, including the backup singers. That could have easily been an overdub. Right, exactly. But he wanted that, for whatever reason, he wanted that vibe. And the fact that we get this found footage, it's so amazing. That I never knew that he was playing piano on this song. I just sort of always assume, I picture him with an acoustic guitar. And at the end, when he's singing those last few lines and then the la la las, there's a little bit of a piano solo over what he's singing and sort of in between the lyrics. It's not a solo because he's also singing, but it's like these little piano licks, and it's really good.
It's really good.
You forget how good of a piano player, because we've sort of seen it all. If you're a person who's seen him over the years, the organ, the electric piano, and now sort of the
grand piano,
the baby grand, the upright, where you couldn't see him, and the plunking away in between, whatever it is. He's a really good piano player, and he's the one playing the solo. And there's something about it where it's both what he's playing is both different than from what he's singing, the la 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 melody, but also complements it so well. And so I highly recommend go watch this video, because you get to see him doing it. You don't see his fingers on the keys, but you get to see him play. You see the rhythm of it, and you get to see him play, and it's just amazing. I mean, I could watch this 100 more times.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
It's such a little, I wonder what else there is.
I can't wait to find out what the Dylan Center has, that they're restoring and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they have, we've seen just a fraction. I forget what percentage they said we've seen, a 13% or something.
There's a lot.
Are the whole New Morning sessions on that? Whatever that. What I said, whatever that porta pack is. Have you ever heard of porta pack?
No. But now we have.
Right. So, Roberta, anything else about the Band and Me?
So I want to talk about very briefly,
please,
about the Bobby V cover of this, because this is a wonderful story. So there are a lot of covers of this song. Yes. I mean,
you got to mention Emma Swift.
You have to. There was a British
2020 album, Blonde on the
British
Tracks.
reggae group called Matumbi.
Matumbi, yeah.
They had a #1 reggae hit with this.
Unbelievable.
And Bob's songs do lend themselves to reggae a lot. I mean, I'm sure you have Is It Rolling Bob, the whole reggae, all those reggae recordings.
I mean, there's reggae on Budokan also.
Reggae on Budokan. Joe Cocker did it. Right. I heard, I found one of the Clash that wasn't on the original album, but
Al Cooper did it. He's on the original album.
My Morning Jacket, I mean, they did it.
Who toured with Bob, by the way.
Right, who toured with Bob, and they interviewed Jim James, right? I mean, you could see they were like, it was an experience for them touring with Bob.
Jim James got to be in the movie.
And then I'm Not There, and the Persuasions. But the one I want to talk about, because it's such a sweet story. So we all know the relationship that Bob had with Bobby Vee.
Why don't you tell us for those that don't know?
So the first paid gig Bob had was with Bobby Vee, who I think was originally from North Dakota, right? Somewhere in North Dakota. And he was, a young guy with a band. When Buddy Holly, there's the Buddy Holly connection.
Right, where Bob saw, he looked at him.
So when Buddy Holly's plane crashed and the radio, they advertised, is there a band that can fill in? And Bobby Vee, who was like, they weren't anybody, but they were there. So we said, they could fill in. And of course, Bob goes and plays piano with them and gets paid. It didn't work out for a long-term thing. Not that they didn't like each other, but, they didn't have money and they, whatever. But Bob always speaks incredibly warmly of Bobby Vee and how important he was to him. And for those who don't know, Bobby Vee was really a teen idol when he was younger. And so one of his iconic songs is Susie Baby. So Bobby Vee developed Alzheimer's in 2011. And, I was reading it was kind of an odd Alzheimer's because it didn't so much affect his cognition as much as his ability to speak. But one thing his family decided they wanted to do, because his kids all play music too, is they wanted to record one last album. And so he owned an Adobe property in Tucson, and they drove out there, the kids, the grandson, whatever, and they recorded a whole album. And it's just unbelievably moving watching, because he's still singing really well and doing all this stuff really well. And so he records The Man in Me, and it's a beautiful version. It's a really, really beautiful version. And, he says his old bandmate, right? And he does this wonderful version, but it's all got this laden stuff with the family and this is going to be the last record he ever makes and whatever. And then when Bob comes, he lives in Minnesota. He lived in Minnesota most of the time. When Bob comes through Minnesota, they bring Bobby Vee to the concert and bring him backstage, and Bob does the Susie song, right? And
backstage for
on stage. He announced,
when was this?
It was 2013.
Oh, okay.
And he announces to everybody, he goes, I played with Madonna and I played with Mick Jagger and I played with all these people, but the most important person I ever played with was Bobby Vee. Wow. And so he goes, and I'm going to perform one of his hits, and he's here tonight, so let him know that he's here, right? And so so he what's the whole name of the song? Susie, where are you? Anyway, he does a beautiful version of this, and he's standing up playing the electric keyboard, and then he just does this beautiful acknowledgement of Bobby Vee, and then there are pictures of them there afterwards. And I'm telling you, it's enough to make you weep,
right?
Because
getting a little verklempt.
I know he the fact that Bob honors him and honors this relationship, and then does this like incredibly kind and wonderful, loving thing that was just beautiful, with the two of them being together and him and Bob doing this beautiful version of his song. And so I just had to bring that cover up because
I mean, especially in that era when I wouldn't call Bob reclusive.
Susie Baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call Bob reclusive, but like he wasn't known for being so talky on stage.
No, not at all. And he's really talky here. And so you get, I would recommend just look up on YouTube Bobby V, the Adobe sessions, and The Man in Me. And so it's beautifully done, and it's laden with so much, right? Because he's not going to be able to cut another record after this. Then Bob paying tribute to him. It's just a great moment.
That is so sweet. I love that. What else?
I think that's pretty much what I wanted to get in. I don't know if we left anything off.
I think we've covered it. I think as Howard Stern says, we've said it all. And Roberto, if folks, as you mentioned, this wonderful Bob Dylan Twitter community that you discovered during the pandemic, if folks want to talk to you, where can they find you?
Roberta, I think _ Rakove I'm still on Twitter.
We call it Twitter. It's funny. We've joked about this, I think, on Twitter, even that the only reason we're still there is because of Bob Dylan.
If we could find a way to recreate their communities.
I mean, there was talk. There was there's Blue Sky
and Instagram, and none of it quite works. It's too bad. But shame on you for screwing up our.
I'll bleep his name out.
But so that's where I am.
Amazing. So it's Roberta _
Rakove.
Rakove. Rakove.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the chance to talk about this. And I wouldn't have gone down. This popped in my head. I said, well, I want to learn more about the song. And now you gave me an excuse to do it. And what a wonderful experience.
Yeah, what a wonderful feeling.
What a wonderful feeling. Exactly. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Thank you to my guest, Roberta Rakove. Please look for the next episode on the first day of the following month, found in all of your podcast feeds. Give us a follow on Twitter @SongsOfBob. If you're subscribing on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to give us a rating and review so the word gets spread. If you'd like to see a video version of this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@SongsOfBobDylan. You can, of course, email us songsofbobdylan@gmail.com. Lastly, thank you to our dear friend and my hero, Rob Kelly, for designing our fabulous logo.
Thanks, Rob.
And to my mandolin teacher, Mark Mitchell, from the Old Town School of Folk Music, for teaching me how to play the intro and outro to this show. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time.